It's not just about you. There are leaders that are out there that all they're about are themselves, their power, their money, whatever. Faith-driven leader, it's not just about you. Hello, welcome to this season of Seek, Go, Create. We've got a great topic that we're going to be covering. It is something that I've been studying for a while, been looking at, and we are calling this the faith-driven leader. So I want to welcome you. Thanks for being here. We've got a lot of things that we want to cover, and let me kind of jump right into it because we've got 5 episodes that we're going to be doing here. This is episode number 1. This is Unleashing the Power of Faith-Driven Leadership. And let me go ahead and give you a preview of what we've got coming up, because we're going to be doing a few things with this, and we're going to be talking about some specific strategies, techniques, and tips, give some definitions here in this first episode of what exactly we're talking about with faith-driven leadership. And then one of the things we're going to be doing with each episode is we will have a biblical example that we're going to pull from to emphasize or make sure we're understanding these points. So let me go over the 5 episodes just so you know what's coming up and give you a preview of things to come. This is episode number 1, Unleashing the Power of Faith-Driven Leadership, giving some definitions and some foundations for this season's episodes. Then we'll be talking about Beyond Success, why faith-driven leadership matters, why you need to be a faith-driven leader and why it's important, not just for you, for the people around you, but for the world. We'll talk about that. And then the next episode, number 3, Mastering Faith-Driven Leadership, proven tips and strategies, kind of some basics, some foundational things of being a faith-driven leader. And then one of the things we know as leaders, we always face challenges, roadblocks. So in episode 4, we're going to be talking about overcoming challenges, the grit and grace of faith-driven leadership. I love that title, the grit and grace of faith-driven leadership, how to overcome challenges. And then finally, our episode 5 is getting to really what a lot of people think leadership is, and that is purpose-driven leadership, how faith can transform your leadership and what it means for leading other people. So let's dive into this first episode and get into some definitions and what it all means and what it means for you as a faith-driven leader. Now, one of the things I mentioned earlier is each episode, we're going to cover a topic, a few points in this episode, some definitions and practices, plus going to give a biblical example. I'll give you a preview of the biblical example I'll get to in just a moment. We're going to talk about the life of Moses and how he was a faith-driven leader. Now, one of the things I do want to say, if you've been around me long enough, you know that I talk about how life, how things we do, especially leadership, business, all of those things, they are not a destination that we're trying to get to. It's not something that we're trying to move towards. And when we get there, we relax, we are perfected, everything's great, life is awesome. No, we are talking about a journey, not a destination. And so one of the things that I want to emphasize with this is that we're going on a journey together. And we want to provide some resources along the way, because one of the things I did is I'm trying to keep these episodes short, compact, and to the point, and which I know a lot of people will appreciate. But one of the things I also want to do for someone who feels as if they need some additional information or some additional training or some resources or to work on some things that we might bring up outside of this episode, then we want to provide some things. And I think the first place to start is something that we've created, which we're calling it the Faith-Driven Quiz. And I'm really just asking you, encouraging you to take the quiz. We created a short and simple assessment. I love assessments. It gets us thinking, and we have to answer questions and think about things. And this is a fairly simple one. It's 20 questions just to get a starting point or a checkpoint along our journey. You could find the quiz at timwinders.com/faith-driven quiz. And there'll be links down below here, wherever you're consuming or watching this, and we'll make sure we have that. But go take the quiz and see where you stand as a faith-driven leader. I will tell you this. I would guess you're not perfect. I would hope you're not. If you are, then we need to get you to come teach and share with us, or I need to interview you for the podcast. But go take the quiz and see where you are. It'll give you a way to think about where you are and possibly some areas to improve upon, or get some coaching, or get some help, or do some additional training. So it's just 20 questions. They're pretty easy. You'll read and self-assess just where you are, and then that can lead you to identify areas to work on or improve upon. So make sure you go take the quiz. timwinders.com/faith-driven quiz. So go check that out. All right, let's do this. Let's go into some definitions so that we know what we're talking about as faith-driven leaders. A faith-driven leader is a person who integrates their religious or spiritual beliefs into their leadership style and decision-making process. They prioritize their faith as a guiding force in their personal and professional life and strive to lead with integrity, compassion, and purpose. A faith-driven leader also seeks to serve their followers, people that they're responsible for, their stakeholders, and their community by aligning their actions with their beliefs and their values. They understand that their leadership is not just about achieving personal success. It's not just about you. There are leaders that are out there that all they're about are themselves, their power, their money, whatever. Faith-driven leader, it's not just about you or your success. It's also making a positive impact on the lives of others. Faith-driven leaders may come from different religious backgrounds, different beliefs, or if they are followers of Christ like I am, they may actually be from different denominations, or there may be some things that there's some differences. That's fine. I believe they share a common commitment to using their faith as a source of strength and inspiration in their leadership journey. They are driven by a higher purpose and see their leadership as a way to fulfill their spiritual calling while making a meaningful difference in the world. Now that we've got what a faith-driven leader is out of the way, let's break each one of those words down. Let's talk about leader, let's talk about faith, and let's talk about the word driven. A leader is someone who uses their faith as the foundation of their leadership. They are individuals who are called to serve and inspire others through their actions and words, and who are dedicated to living a life that reflects their faith in God, their higher power. Faith-driven leaders recognize that their role is not about seeking personal gain or power, but about serving others and fulfilling a greater purpose that is rooted in their faith. It's foundational to them. They are committed to leading by example and to inspiring others to follow their lead and living a life that is centered on faith, integrity, and love for others. Now, one of the things that I've always said is a definition that I've used for leader. A leader is a steward, a caretaker, a trustee over those people, places, and things that God has gifted you with. They're not an owner. They are a steward or a caretaker. And I think that helps me, and it may help you understand how that faith, that leader role plays with being a faith-driven leader. Now, let's look at the second thing. Let's look at faith. Faith, as it relates to the faith-driven leader, refers to a deep trust and belief in God and His plan for our life and our leadership. And not just our life, but our leadership. Sometimes we try to segment things out. We're talking about bringing everything together here. Our faith brings everything together. It involves a surrendering of control to God and relying on Him for guidance, wisdom, and strength in all areas of our leadership journey. Faith-driven leaders believe that their purpose and calling comes from God, and that He will provide them with everything that a faith-driven leader needs to fulfill that purpose. This kind of faith is not just a mental assent to certain religious doctrines or belief systems, but a genuine, heartfelt trust in God that shapes every decision and action that I take as a leader. And one of the things, this is kind of like my personal, makes it easy for me, keeps me in check definition of faith. It's knowing and understanding that the world does not revolve around me. It's not about self, or it's not about just me, And this is the way I joke about it. It's more about him and less about Tim. And I'm pointing up for those that may not see my finger. It's more about him and less about Tim. That is what faith is. And that's how I am able to stay checked and grounded. Let's look at the word driven. As it applies to faith-driven leader, the word driven refers to the deep motivation and commitment that they have to integrate their faith into their leadership style and decision-making process. It implies that their faith is a powerful force that propels them forward, giving them a sense of purpose and direction in their leadership journey, in your leadership journey, in my leadership journey. It propels us forward. It's something that drives us. It's not passive. It doesn't keep us sitting on the sidelines. It's interesting. I talked to actually a group of Christians about this word driven, and there were people that were uncomfortable with the word driven. But here's what I know. Most people, especially high achievers, people that move into leadership roles, people that are entrepreneurs, business, people that even run ministries and other organizations, something drives them. And I think if we were to ignore that they're driven by something, then I think we're not being faithful to who we are and how we're made up. There are people that are high achievers and they're driven by stuff. And I want us to understand that the word driven is okay. And we're driven by something. We choose to be driven by our faith. We're active, not passive. A few things that a faith-driven leader is not. A faith-driven leader is not perfect. We all have flaws and shortcomings, some of us more than others. And that's okay, because if anybody states that they're perfect or that they have no flaws, then we probably have some issues with humility or things like that. What sets us apart, though, is our willingness to grow and learn from mistakes. There's one entire episode of this season that we're going to be talking about how to deal with mistakes, failures, roadblocks, and things that happen when we mess up. We'll be using as our biblical example David and his life for that one. Some of you know what we'll be looking at there. Being a faith-driven leader is not just a title or role, it's a way of life. It permeates everything we do and everything that we are. It's not just something that we are 9 to 5 or while we're in our work environment or while we're in that leadership role. It permeates everything about who we are. It's about using our God-given talents and abilities to serve others, make a positive impact on the world. Faith-driven leaders are not motivated by money or power. Now, we're not against money. We're not really against even our ego and the things that happen when we step into roles or positions where we have some degree of control or power. But we have to understand that we need to keep that in check, and we can't be driven by that. I think most of us have recognized times in our lives where we've had situations where we were driven by money, and usually that doesn't end well, or we were driven by power or our ego or pride or something like that. Faith-driven leaders are not driven by those things. They're driven by their faith. They're guided by a sense of purpose and a desire to make a difference in the lives of those around them. Arrogance and cockiness have no place in the life of a faith-driven leader. Humility and a servant's heart are essential to leading with grace and compassion. Being a faith-driven leader is not just for pastors or full-time ministers. We need to say that here. Sometimes people think this is the stuff that is just for the preachers. It's just for those ministers. No, this is for everyone. It is my firm belief that many of us, many of you, are called to be out in the marketplace, to be out in the world. All of Jesus' disciples did not come from ministry. They were business people. And faith-driven leaders are to function and operate in that role. It's a calling that can be lived out in any profession or vocation. Finally, a faith-driven leader is not a destination, but a journey. Like we said earlier, it's a lifelong pursuit of growing in faith, character, and leadership, and always striving to be the best version of yourself. It's a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset. And one of the things we mentioned earlier, I'll go ahead and mention again here, is that we've got some tools and resources to help on that journey. So make sure you go take that quiz, that faith-driven leader quiz, just to assess yourself and see where you are. There's some links down in the notes for that. Now, finally, let's wrap up this episode with an example from the Bible. Let's talk about one of the big time leaders of faith from the Bible, which is Moses. I've just finished reading about Moses for the second time. I did a read through the Bible last year, just where I've read through his life again, and what a life he had. What an example of patience, taking time. We need to understand time when we're leaders, and expectations of perfect results. I saw all of this in Moses' life, and I made some notes here. I just read through. Moses, a well-known figure in the Bible who demonstrated faith-driven leadership throughout his life. He was chosen by God to lead the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt and into the promised land. That's what he was chosen to do. I want to remind everyone that he was chosen at the age, we believe, of 80. That was after 40 years that he spent as a prince, living probably pretty well in Egypt. And then he made a mistake. He actually killed a man. Someone called him out on it, and he fled and went into the desert and spent 40 years in the desert. Let's talk patience. 40 years in the desert. And then he was led out of that by God to lead the nation of Israel, God's people, into the promised land, out of slavery in Egypt into the promised land. Despite facing many obstacles and setbacks along the way, Moses remained faithful to God and trusted in his power and guidance. One of the most inspiring aspects of Moses' leadership is his willingness to stand up to authority when he knew it was not aligned with God's will. He confronted Pharaoh. You know what? It's not all about just love and compassion. Sometimes we're called to confront people. Moses had to confront people on behalf of the Israelites, and he spoke truth. He spoke what God told him to say, even when it meant risking his own life, even when he knew that God was hardening Pharaoh's heart. He also interceded on behalf of his people before God and demonstrated great compassion and empathy towards them. And let's just go ahead and say it. Moses had great patience because for a number of the 40 years that they wandered in the desert, I underlined this a number of times when I was reading through this recently. It says that the people complained. The people complained. The people complained. They were not grateful. They were not saying, Moses, thank you so much. No, the people complained quite a bit. He was also a man of great faith and prayer. He relied on God's strength and guidance to overcome the many challenges he faced, including leading the Israelites through the Red Sea and providing them with food, water, and what they needed in the desert. And again, he had to intercede. He had to be patient, and he demonstrated that patience, humility, and perseverance in his leadership, always seeking God's will and trusting in his promises. And it's impressive when you read through all that Moses went through. Moses' life is a powerful example for us of what it means to be a faith-driven leader. He had courage in the face of adversity. He had compassion for his people, and he had unwavering faith over what I consider to be long periods of time. If I knew that I was going to need to be in a place of patience for 40 years, I am not sure that I could handle that. Many of you are probably the same way, but he trusted in God, and those are qualities that any leader would do well to emulate. We can always look to Moses as an example of what we can all do to be a faith-driven leader. This has been awesome. This is called Unleashing the Power of Faith-Driven Leadership in this episode 1. I want you to make sure you go take the quiz at timwinders.com/faith-driven quiz and take those 20 questions and just see where you are. And I think that'll be helpful for you because I know it helped me to go through those questions. And I think it's just a good assessment for you. I want to remind you that we've got episodes coming up that are Beyond Success, Why Faith-Driven Leadership Matters. That is episode 2, and that is why we need people like you to be faith-driven leaders. So make sure you check that out. Until next time, I want everyone to continue being all that you were created to be. And I believe that you were created to be a faith-driven leader.